If a dishwasher is leaking at any point along the door, the cause could be because the gasket is loose, damaged, aligned improperly, or missing entirely. Many times this problem can be fixed without a service call and without the need for special tools. There are 3 types of gaskets used in GE dishwashers. This gasket is for stainless steel dishwashers. This gasket is used with middle to high-end plastic tub models with a black gasket attached to the tub. And the last is for timer-based plastic models with a thin white gasket attached to the door. For stainless models, first confirm that the gasket is oriented with the flanged edge facing inward. If it is not, it will need to be reseated. Next, check along the gasket for any place that isn't properly seated, especially where the dishwasher tends to leak. A properly seated gasket will have this lip flush with the edge of the slot on the tub. If there is a section of the gasket not completely seated in the slot, it can be pressed back in using your fingertips. Check the corners to ensure that they are not kinked, and observe the tails of the gasket, making sure they are even in length and are both facing underneath the door. To reseat this type of gasket, first remove it from the tub. This type of gasket should have a single wire that inserts into each tail and tucks underneath the door. Find the white line on the back of the gasket. This marks the center point. With the flanged edge facing inward, line up the white line with the top center of the tub and insert it line side in. Next, press it into either the left or the right, being careful not to stretch out the gasket as you work along. Stretching out the gasket will cause it to line up improperly in the corners or the tails. When you get to a corner, stop and work to the other corner from the center. Finish by pressing it in down the sides of the tub, again being careful not to stretch out the gasket. Before tucking the tails underneath the door, insert the wire into each end of the gasket. The V-shaped notch should be placed with the open end of the V facing downward. Tuck the tails and the wire underneath the door. If it is still not seated properly, try again. It can take an inexperienced person a couple of times to successfully seat a gasket. A new gasket may be needed. For plastic tub dishwashers with a wide black gasket, check along the gasket to ensure it is fully seated in all locations, especially where leakage has occurred. Anywhere it is not fully seated, simply press it in with your fingertips. Check the corners to ensure that they are not kinked and check the tails to see that they are properly aligned. To reseat the gasket, pull out the gasket and find the line located on the back in the center. Align this with the center of the top of the tub and press it in. Next, press it into either the right or the left, being careful not to stretch out the gasket as you work along. Stretching out the gasket will cause it to line up improperly in the corners or the tails. When you finish a corner, stop and work to the other corner from the center. Check to make sure the gasket isn't kinked in either corner. After the corners are complete, press the gasket down at the tails and work up. Finish pressing it in down the sides of the tub, being careful not to stretch it out. If the gasket will not stay in the slot after pressing it in, it may either be too large or too small, and a new part will need to be ordered and mailed out to you. For plastic tub dishwashers with a thin white gasket on the inside of the door, check along the gasket to make sure it is fully pressed into the slot around the entire door, making sure to check the gasket under the door, for it wraps all the way around. If this type of gasket is kinked in a corner or seems to be unevenly aligned, it may need to be completely reseated. Reseating this gasket is the most difficult of the three and may require the aid of a GE technician. The difficulty is mainly because inserting the gasket on the underside of the door must be done blindly. To attempt to reseat it, first remove the lower rack. Next, remove the gasket, being careful not to damage the tails that wrap under the door. Find the center slotted section of the gasket and align it with the top center of the door. Press it into the slot and continue to press it in around the perimeter of the door. At the bottom edge of the door, wrap the tail around the corner and press it into the slot. You could use a handheld mirror, or you may need to feel with your hand to find the slot underneath the door. Press each tail into the slot along its full length. The tails will not touch each other. A gap between them is normal. Just be sure that the gasket is evenly aligned and fully seated along its entire length.